just before the pandemic struck. So I'm guessing this was probably last January, early February. I had been contacted by a bunch of parishioners in a parish that I had been pastor of to get together for lunch. It was going to be a Friday afternoon. I looked at my schedule. It worked out perfectly. We all met at the restaurant to sit down and enjoy each other's company. Now, I knew that we were supposed to, that same afternoon, have a whole lot of rain. It was going to be very, very rainy. It was going to rain very hard. So as I sat in the restaurant, I was curious as to whether or not I was going to be able to get home before the rain started. I sat there having lunch, talking to my friends, and I was looking out the window, curious as to whether or not the rain had started. I looked, and at one point, within the frame of the picture window, 6 people arrived walking in opposite directions. 2 of them were walking quite upright, just walking normally. And I said, oh, it hasn't started raining. But then 2 more appeared, and they kind of had their collars up, and they were walking kind of hunched over. And then 2 more appeared, and they had umbrellas up. And then 2 more walking clearly, some more with umbrellas. And I remember saying to myself, wow, look at some of those people, how confidently they're walking through the rain. It's raining on them like everyone else, and yet they're just walking upright like there's nothing happening. They seem to be very confident of themselves. Confidence. That's what I thought of when I looked at the readings this day. Confidence. And what it's supposed to do, what it can do for us when we allow that confidence to come from Jesus. Now, I must confess that if I hadn't chosen to celebrate this particular Mass this day, without having looked at the readings, I would have guessed, if someone else asked me to come in here today from Catholic TV, I would have guessed that I was being set up, seeing that the gospel is about probably the most famous short guy in the gospel itself. I chose to come here. And when I said yes months ago, I didn't know that good old Zacchaeus was going to be mentioned in the readings. Zacchaeus knew he wasn't perfect. Zacchaeus knew that because he was a tax collector, because tax collectors weren't exactly what you would call honest men, he knew that even though he was curious about Jesus, he wouldn't be able to just walk amongst the crowd of his fellow townspeople because they didn't like him very much. Tax collectors were not very popular people. And so, the reason for Zacchaeus being in the tree wasn't just because he was short. Zacchaeus was in the tree because he couldn't be with anyone else. They didn't like him. He might have been attacked. And so in one way, he was kind of hiding in that tree from the people that didn't like him, who were down on the ground. He was curious. He watched. He didn't say a word. He didn't want anyone to know he was up there. Jesus came. And all Jesus does, all he does, is call. Zacchaeus, get down here. Come down here. Zacchaeus immediately is returned to his own native people, which is why Jesus says at the end, he too is a descendant of Abraham. He's one of you. Let's work together in changing him. Allow my power to change all of your hearts. It's an amazing story. Well, Zacchaeus comes down, as you well know, and the confidence with which he faces this situation, now knowing that Jesus is with him, is amazing. Lord, comes right down. Lord, if I've done anything to anyone, I'm sure he looked around, if I've done anything, I will repay, I will change, I will be transformed, because you've called me in front of them, and that fills me with confidence. My friends, that's the confidence that you and I are invited to touch our hearts every single day. That first reading, it's kind of confusing from the book of Revelation, I know, but the churches are being spoken to. And some of the churches were doing the right thing, some of them weren't. Some of them got kind of lazy, apathetic. Others were getting too trendy. In both cases, they had lost focus of who called them to be together. And they were losing some of that confidence that always leads you in the right direction. My friends, today you and I are reminded that because of the relationship that we have with Jesus, He's calling to us all the time. Maybe not to come down from a tree, but He's calling us away from anything that might hurt us, that might harm us, that might put us in an incorrect direction. And when we allow ourselves to hear His voice, we are filled with such confidence that we are able to face anything. We are able to be changed. We are able to be transformed as Zacchaeus was transformed. And so, I think we're being reminded to listen for His voice, because we never know when He'll call. We just need to have confidence in the fact that He definitely will call.